Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
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 Good morning.
There we go. So we have, so I'll wait another minute or so. Adam and Stephanie, I remember I was supposed to email you something. Did I get back to you already?
No, I don't believe so.
Oh, we were supposed to meet about, so you had some questions. I should apologize up front again. Hello, everybody. Apologize up front again to everybody for not getting back to you about emails. Just swimming in emails, and I try to get back to everybody, but some just I just fall through the cracks. So
That's okay, no worries.
yeah, so why don't we if you can put in the chat box there maybe a couple of possible dates and times. You can send it just to me so you don't have to bother everybody else, and then I can send you a Zoom link or something for one of those times or something like that. How about that?
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, Rabbi, you did it. What did I do?
Yes, I was expecting something from you last week, and you just sent me the links by
I did.
email.
Oh, that's right. I did. Right.
Yeah.
So it is kind of hit or miss. I'm not playing favorites. I'm just trying desperately to keep up with my emails. Okay, so let's talk about Shavuot today. Next week, just as a heads up of what's to come. Next week, we're going to talk about the conversion process. You know, what the steps are of the Beit Din and everything, and what the next steps will be. And we're also going to have a guest speaker come in for about 5 or 10 minutes to talk about our congregation sisterhood. That's a way for women to get involved in different activities at the synagogue. The following week, the 16th, is going to be mostly guest speakers coming in to talk about different things happening at the synagogue. So we'll have somebody from 100 Jewish Men, which is sort of a counterpart to Sisterhood. It's a men's program for men to get involved. Basically a group that meets once a month for dinner and a discussion. This last year and a half during COVID, they haven't been meeting, they've been meeting virtually, but hopefully starting in the fall, they'll be able to start meeting in person again. We'll also have somebody, hopefully maybe somebody from the Social Action Committee, and Liz Vincent will come in and talk about the museum minion again, and somebody come in and talk about the chapel. So basically the idea is to, part of the next steps after conversion are becoming involved in the community. And so I wanted to give you some access points to find ways. I mean, particularly this year, because we've been online and it's been hard to meet anybody. If you meet sort of people who are involved in or engaged in different parts of the synagogue, and you can get their contact information, then you can start to participate in those ways. So that's what's coming up. Today is going to be oh, that's a great idea. Okay, so today we're going to have we're going to talk about Shavuot and this book of Ruth, and you'll see why that's kind of particularly relevant for us here. So let's what I'm gonna do is share the screen. Hopefully you got the outline. It's online, you can access it. Let me I'll give you the URL for it if you'd like. There. Okay, hold on one second. I'm going to put on the chat room for a second. Okay, there's the link to, whoops, that's not right. Try it again. There. Okay, that's the link to the handout for today, but I'll be showing it to you while we're talking today, so you'll see it. Okay, there you go. Okay, so Shavuot is gets its name Shavuot. You know, you may have noticed that when Shabbat ends on Saturday night, the greeting that we wish people on Saturday night is Shavua Tov. Shavua means week, Tov means good. So we're asking as we end the Sabbath day and we start the new week, that you should have a good week, right? And the way you welcome people on Friday night, or even Saturday morning during the Sabbath, we say Shabbat Shalom, which is to say Sabbath of peace. May you have a peaceful Shabbat. But when Shabbat ends, we say Shavua Tov, may you have a good week. So Shavua means week, and in Hebrew, the plural is made, if it's a feminine noun, usually by adding ot at the end. So Shavua becomes Shavuot, and now it's weeks. And so that's how the festival gets its name. The reason it's called weeks is because we count a week of weeks from the second day of Passover, and a week of weeks is 7 times 7, 49 days. And the day after the week of weeks is up, that is the 50th day, is Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. So it's 50 days after the second day of Passover. And in between, we've been counting every day. So if you've come to our Friday night services, at the end of the service, we count the night, the day, right? So we just had, for instance, Lag BaOmer. It was in the international news. You may have read about it. Lag BaOmer is a semi-festival day. In Israel, it's frequently celebrated even by secular Jews by having barbecue. Barbecue became some symbol of the holiday. And Israelis love barbecue. They call it mangal. And so they're all barbecuing food that day and lighting bonfires. People love fires. That happens all over the country. But in one particular place in Israel, up in the north, Mount Morgen, a lot of particularly Hasidic and Kabbalistic Jews go up to visit the grave of Shimon Bar Yochai, who was a Kabbalistic rabbi. And I think he died on Lag BaOmer, and so they go up there to celebrate the festival of Lag BaOmer. And so this counting, maybe we talked about that already, comes from actually the Bible. Actually, the Torah portion that we read yesterday, Emor in Leviticus, talks about counting the days between Passover and Shavuot, connecting those two holidays together. And one of the things you would do when you counted the day was I don't need to share a screen for this. You would bring a handful of grain. Passover comes about the time of the beginning of the barley harvest. So all of those 50 days, we're harvesting barley out in the fields, and a handful of sheaves of barley grains would be brought into the temple in Jerusalem to sort of by way of thanking God for the bounty of the harvest. And also praying that nothing would happen to the crops until we were finished harvesting them. So that was the original idea of Shavuot. It's the harvest, and we're in the middle of harvesting, and we're going to bring an omer of barley every day. We're counting each day, and on the 33rd day is this festival. And as you know, hopefully by now, each letter of the Hebrew alphabet has a number value. So the letter Lamed has the value of 30, and the letter Gimel has the value of 3, right? The way, if you haven't seen this before, it's a game that is played in Jewish tradition called Gematria, comes actually from a Greek word from which we get in English geometry, Gematria. So it's like a number game. Anyway, so it goes like this. The first 10 letters of the alphabet are the numbers 1 through 10. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, right? After you get to 10, then you start counting by tens. So Kaf is 20, Lamed is 30, Mem is 40, Nun is 50, Samach is 60, Ayin is 70, Pei is 80, Sadi is 90, and Kuf is 100. Somehow I missed it up there. Anyway, Kuf is 100. Then you start counting by hundreds. Reish is 200, Shin is 300, and Taf is 400. Right? And that's as far as we get because we run out of letters of the alphabet. So after that, you're out of luck. Okay, so so Lamed Gimel, then Lamed is 30, Gimel is 3, and together they make 33. So the 33rd day of the Omer is called Lag, Lamed Gimel, Ba'omer. So the 30th Lag Ba'omer means the 33rd day of the Omer counting. And like I say, it was a semi-holiday where they'd go up north, and a bunch of people went up north, and tragically, there's so many people there. There was a crush of people, literally a crush of people, and several people died, and many other people were injured. It's a terrible tragedy. Anyway, so let's go back to sharing the screen again. How come it doesn't want to share? There we go. Okay, so we're counting these days, 50 days. So why do we count the days between? Well, I actually gave a sermon about this yesterday, which we'll post. I'll post on my Facebook page if we're not. So you can always friend me on Facebook, and even if you don't use Facebook very often, and from time to time I post articles or videos or things there, or programs that are coming up. But you will also get you hopefully are getting our weekly email from Beth Yeshurun, and in that long list of things that are coming up for the week, there's also a link to the YouTube page where our sermons are posted. So I just gave a sermon about why we count the days from Passover to Shavuot. I'll just mention two of them here. So one of them is that it is the Harvest Festival. That's probably the historical reason. And we are grateful to God for the harvest. And so that's why we're counting the days till the end of the harvest season. So the barley harvest ends on Shavuot, and that's when the wheat harvest begins. And a more spiritual reason for connecting the days was provided by our rabbis. And I think this is maybe a more important one for us. And that is that Passover represents freedom, right? Getting out of slavery. And now we're free people. We have free will. We can choose to do what we want to do. But with freedom comes responsibility. And I think that's, America was founded based on individual freedom, right? The life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's all about my freedoms, what I'm allowed to do, and don't mess with my freedom, because that's what America's about. And while that's important, I think that in that discussion, what's tragically missing is responsibility. That's where I think religion comes in, right? Religion is trying to teach people to be moral and to be kind. And it's what you do with your freedom that's important, you know? Even America recognizes limits of freedom. You're not free to drive 100 miles an hour down a crowded freeway, you're not wearing a seatbelt and, drunk, right? Because that you're then a danger to everybody else. So you do have responsibilities. But as a religion, Judaism is more able to say, yeah, you have moral responsibilities. So now that you're free from Egypt, what are you going to do about it? What do you do with it? And the answer is that 50 days after we leave Egypt, we're standing at Mount Sinai and getting the 10 Commandments. So we're connecting our freedom to our responsibilities. responsibilities to God, what God's commanded us to do. But since most of those commandments are about how to behave, how to be good and moral and ethical, right? It's about how we our responsibilities towards our fellow citizens, towards our family, and towards the world. So, so baked into the Jewish system is not only the right of liberty, not only the sense of freedom, but also the idea of responsibility and obligation. So what did I miss here? Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. So so that's another reason for counting the days and connecting the two of them. We call it, it's sometimes called Festival of Weeks, Shavuot. It's sometimes in the Bible called Atzeret, which simply means a concluding festival. It concludes the spring holiday cycle, which started with Passover. Similarly, Shmini Atzeret in the fall, the 8th day of assembly, is the concluding festival of the fall holiday cycle, Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. So this is the Atzeret of springtime. And then it's sometimes in rabbinical literature called Zman Matan Toratenu, which means the time of giving our Torah. That is the revelation at Mount Sinai. So I'll talk a little about the 10 Commandments in a bit. We'll come back to that. How do we know that 50 days after leaving Israel, after leaving Egypt, we were standing at Mount Sinai getting the 10 Commandments? It doesn't say that in the Bible per se. What you do is you look at Exodus chapter 19, verse 1, and you see that they arrive at the bottom of Mount Sinai in the 3rd month. And the 3rd month is the month of Sivan, which is the month that Shavuot falls in. So we're at the 1st day of the month of Sivan. Shavuot falls on the 6th day of Sivan. So we've got to get an extra 6 days in there from 19 verse 1 until the giving of the 10 Commandments a few verses later. The rabbis find a way to fetch out, to like eke out those 6 days in the words. It's not so obvious, but they're close anyway. It really is close to being the time, at least when the Torah was given. And we say that it was on the 6th day of the month. Okay, the Torah service, every Torah service, this is what number 3 is here. Every Torah service in the synagogue is a reenactment of that giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And if we don't have time right now, but I could show you in the prayers that we use to surround the reading of the Torah that we're supposed to be reminded of that event. So every time we read from the Torah liturgically in the synagogue, we are sort of imagining that we're reenacting that scene at Mount Sinai. But of course, the holiday where we focus on that is Shavuot. Just like every day, twice a day, we sing Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai, who is like you, God among the mighty, which is a song our ancestors sang when they crossed the Red Sea after escaping from slavery in Egypt. So every day of the year, we're remembering the Exodus from Egypt, but then we have Passover to sort of really focus on the Exodus. And so that's a similar idea. Every Torah service reminds us of Mount Sinai, but we have a whole holiday that reminds us of Sinai, and that's Shavuot. So we're free from Pharaoh, now serving God. There's a big difference between the two. Pharaoh was trying to, didn't care about humanity, wasn't concerned about the life of the slaves. He just wanted the free labor and whatever it took. And if several people died in the process, that wasn't a problem. He's got more slaves to take their place. Human dignity is destroyed in slavery, whereas serving God was all about preserving and protecting human dignity. So very different different sources of authority. And finally, sometimes it's also called Chag HaBikurim, which means the festival of first fruits. 5 species of fruit are found in Israel: grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. And then 2 grains, barley and wheat as well, so altogether 7. And sometimes called Chag HaKatzir, the harvest festival. It's the end, as I said here, the barley harvest and the beginning of the wheat harvest. Okay, so that's enough about that. What are the rituals for the holiday? Well, one of them is we eat dairy foods. I used to add an article on that. Let's just see where this takes us for a second. Right, okay. Can you see the screen, My Jewish Learning, or not? You can't see? Yes? Do you see the My Jewish Learning screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's cool. So the link works.
Yep.
Okay, so so this is why do we eat dairy on Shavuot? It's a link to this article. It's the real answer is we don't know why we eat dairy on Shavuot. It became a custom, and after it became a custom, after the fact, people wanted to explain it. So we came up with many different reasons. They're all kind of interesting, but it's a custom, and we still eat dairy food. So what we're going to be doing, by the way, at Passover, at Shavuot, let me see if I share screen and I go back to, can I can't go back to that thing, can I? Let's go back here. Okay, here we go. Boom, there you go, back to the outline. Okay. What we're going to do, what we do typically at Beth Yeshurun, oh, well, let me first talk about this Tikkun Leil Shavuot, and then I'll talk about dairy foods. So Tikkun means a repair. Leil Shavuot means the night of Shavuot. This is a holiday that's recent. It's only a few hundred years old. Custom, actually, that's only a few hundred years old. It started in Tzfat with those Kabbalistic Jewish mystics in the north part of Israel, in the little town. So this is after the expulsion from Spain, and the Ottoman Empire captures Israel, and Jews from the Ottoman Empire settle in Israel, many of them up in this town up in the north. And they developed this new Kabbalistic thinking that the world is broken. That's not so new, but that we can fix it. And the way you fix the world, the way Jews fix the world and their thinking, was by Jews doing mitzvot, Jews doing commandments. And they do all kinds of commandments, and every time they do a commandment, they fix a little spark of holiness in the world. Part of their thinking was that on the night of Shavuot, the Israelites went to sleep before receiving the 10 Commandments in the morning. And they thought, wow, that was so disrespectful to God. I'm just telling you what they thought. So disrespectful to God. In their imagination, Passover is the betrothal of the Jewish people. We were betrothed to God. He took us out of Egypt like a groom takes his fiancée out of her parents' home, right? And now there's the great romance of God and the Israelites. And there's this great romantic thing, and that's why they recommended reading the Song of Songs on Passover, because it's love poetry, right? That's the image they had. Now, if you actually read the Bible and you read the book of Exodus, it was not such a great romance. The Israelites were always complaining about everything. We don't have water, we don't have food, we want meat, we're being attacked. Let's go back to Egypt. I mean, it was really not such a great romance, but in the imagination of these Kabbalists in Tzfat, it was a very romantic time. And it leads up to a wedding, right? Hopefully every engagement leads up to a wedding if it's successful. And at a Jewish wedding, you have to have a marriage contract called a ketubah. So the wedding ceremony takes place at Mount Sinai, and the ketubah, the wedding contract, is God giving us the 10 Commandments, right? That's the ketubah. Interestingly, of course, in the Jewish law, the ketubah is mostly what the groom's responsibilities are to the bride. But in this contract, this ketubah, it's God's telling the Israelites what their responsibilities are to God, instead of reversed. But anyway, it's a ketubah. So in the imagination of these rabbis in Tzfat, these Kabbalists in Tzfat, how dare the Israelites have fallen asleep the night before their wedding? Who falls asleep the night before their wedding? They're so excited and anticipating, can't wait until it happens. I want to see, I want my wedding day. I can't sleep. I'm so excited. But they fell asleep. So the Kabbalists in Tzfat said, We're going to we're going to stay up all night, and we're going to study Jewish texts. We're going to study God's word, whether it's the Bible or commentaries on the Bible or the Talmud or other things. We're going to study texts all night and excitement, anticipation of reading about the giving of the Ten Commandments in the morning in the Torah service for Shavuot. So that was their Tikkun Leil Shavuot, and they're repairing the Tikkun part is that they're repairing the mistake the Israelites made thousands of years ago when they fell asleep on the wedding night. We're going to repair that mistake by us staying up all night. Now, I read an article several years ago. It turns out that coffee had recently been discovered in Africa and had been, thanks to the Ottoman Empire and international merchants in Europe, the coffee trade had already expanded all across Europe and into Asia and into Israel. And it actually is mentioned by these Kabbalists in Tzfat that they have discovered this amazing new elixir that helps you to stay up all night. Conveniently, just when they want you to stay up all night, they discovered coffee, which can enable you to do that. So perhaps coffee was a necessary discovery to make the Tikkun Leil Shavuot work. It is still, since Shavuot doesn't have a lot of customs other than eating dairy foods and this Tikkun Leil Shavuot and reading the book of Ruth, there's not a lot of customs that we do on Shavuot. It's become very common in congregations all over the United States and in communities all over Israel to stay up all night studying some Jewish texts or having people give talks for 45 minutes or an hour each, lining them up one after the other to talk about different subjects so that you stay up all night and then go to services in the morning. And I was in Jerusalem 3 different years for Shavuot in my life. And each time I did the same thing. It's really quite amazing. I'd go to some place where they were doing an all-night study, and we would study all night. And then just before the sun comes up, everybody starts walking to the old city of Jerusalem. And once you get into the old city, they'd walk towards the Temple Mount where the Western Wall was. And Jews from all over the city would be packing into that Temple Mount, the Western Wall courtyard, where there were set up several Torah reading tables, and little minions of Torah readers are reading Torah all across that courtyard. Now, you may know that the courtyard is run by the Orthodox Jews, and so there are no women on the men's side of the plaza, which is very expansive. So it's all men there gathering around Torah reading tables, listening to the Torah being read. Women in the in sort of very traditional Orthodox world do not read Torah, and so there's a big dispute about reading the Torah on the women's side of the kotel, which is much less expansive than the men's anyway. And then there's an egalitarian part of the Western Wall that our movement demanded the government make available. And I haven't been there on Shavuot since that was established, so I don't know how that works. But in any case, it is amazing to have everybody crowding in there for Torah reading. And then as the services end in the wee hours of the morning, the sun has just come up and it's 45 minutes or an hour after sunrise, and people are finishing their services and everybody streams home. They leave through the winding alleyways of the old city and out the old city walls, and then go out to their apartments all over town. And that's really quite a remarkable thing. Everybody's really, really tired from having stayed up all night. It's just fascinating to see people streaming into the old city from all over and then streaming out of the old city, going out to their different places at the end of the day. So that is a thing. It's a particular thing in Jerusalem, but in other parts of the country in Israel as well, and all over the United States. Even Reform and conservative synagogues like ours do some kind of study session for Shavuot to mark it as special. And so what we're going to be doing, I guess, let me just tell you that, and then we'll go back to the outline. So what do we do? So typically what we do is we gather for a very short evening service, about 15 minutes, and then we have dinner. And for the last 10 years or so, the dinner has been, it's supposed to be dairy food. So the last 10 years, we've been doing kind of brunch food. So it's eggs, pancakes, blintzes. Blintzes have cheese in them. They're kind of crepes with cheese-filled crepes, and and some dairy products to go with that. Yeah, cheese and wine. Yeah, we unfortunately don't have wine, but we should have wine to go with the cheese. That would be nice. That would make a great dinner for Shavuot, cheese and wine. In any case, we've been doing brunch kind of food, and then we would have different rabbis or congregants do talks on different topics, usually based on a theme. So this year, from last year, because of the pandemic, we didn't gather at all. We did everything online, and we had a special program about conversos. There was a documentary that had come out about the forced converts from Spain, from the Spanish Inquisition, Jews who were forced to convert but continued to practice Judaism in secret. Somebody had done a documentary on those folks, and we first watched the documentary, and then Ana Guerra, who converted to Judaism, her family was from a family of these Anusim, these forced converts. And she's done a lot of research about the Anusim, and she did a PowerPoint presentation about the Anusim in the northern Mexican Texas region of this area. Turns out there's large population of conversos who moved to northern Mexico, came into Texas, New Mexico, and she did a presentation on that. So that's what we did last year. I think it's still on our YouTube channel, not the movie, but Anna's presentation may be there. This year, we're doing a different thing. Another documentary is just coming out. It's going to be on PBS in the next week or two. And it's about the life of Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of the rabbis I've talked about in this class. Famous rabbi, sort of a mystic Hasidic rabbi, but also studied in the universities. So he's learned the sort of modern historical, critical, scientific approach to things. He has a foot in both worlds, that the mystical, spiritual side, and also the sort of more rigorous academic side. And he found a way to combine both of them. He wrote beautifully about spirituality and what it means to be Jewish and prayer and all that. But he also marched with Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement, became a very good friend of Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. And so there's a documentary that just is coming out that's going to be aired on PBS about his life. It's a 1-hour documentary. Several people who participated in the civil rights movement back then, who are now old, appear, and they talk about their experience and memories of King, or what King meant for the movement, but also other people, including his daughter, Susanna Heschel, who's a Jewish studies professor in her own right, and other people comment on his life, his biography, as well as his writings, and of course his activity in the civil rights movement. So we're going to watch that documentary. It's 1 hour long. I highly recommend it. We got the permission to air it for our congregation. You can sign up on our website to get the link, and please watch that. That'll be from like 9 to 10. So that's what we're doing on that. That's the beginning. That's on the 16th, by the way. May 16th is it's the last day of our class. In the morning, we're going to have those groups doing presentations. And then in the evening at 9 o'clock, we watch the movie. And then afterwards, from 10 to 11, four of us rabbis are going to talk about different aspects of Heschel's writings. So Rabbi Strauss will talk about, he wrote an essay on the Sabbath and its meaning. Rabbi Horowitz will, because he's our expert in Kabbalah and Hasidism, he's going to talk about Heschel's writings about Hasidism. And Rabbi Fort is going to talk about Heschel's involvement in the civil rights movement. And I'm going to talk about what Heschel had to say about prayer. He was very, he wrote beautifully about how prayer is supposed to work and how tragically it doesn't often do what it's supposed to do. So that'll be my presentation. So for about an hour, each of us will take one aspect of Heschel's writings, and that will be followed by ice cream. Got to get that dairy food in again. So if you want to come to be in person, we're going to have about 100 people, we hope, will show up in person. The dinner will be in our large auditorium, so everybody can socially distance, spread out in separate tables. Everybody, of course, will be wearing masks except when you're eating. You can register to be part of that, have the dinner, and then watch the movie in the Barg Sanctuary. And the Barg Sanctuary is where we'll also have our conversation. Or you can stay at home and see the movie and the discussion, because we'll be live streaming it. Okay, so that's that story. Now,
Rabbi,
yeah.
can I mention 2 other opportunities that there are for
Oh,
some
yeah.
Shavuot
Please,
learning?
yes, please do.
Yeah, so on Thursday, the 13th, is the Shavuot virtual Learnathon, and that is organized by the JCC and United Orthodox Synagogue and the Houston Rabbinical Association. And we'll have 10 teachers from our community teaching. It begins at 9 o'clock in the morning and goes through till 7 o'clock. Rabbi Fort will be teaching from Beth Yeshurun, but there's a really nice collection of clergy from around the city. So that should be really interesting. And then the other thing that we're participating in is the Rabbinical Assembly's Conservative Tikkun Leil Shavuot, which starts at 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and goes for 24 hours. And so they did the same thing last year. It's all virtual. They have clergy and cantors and educators from around the country. So it's a really interesting collection of teaching, of music, of art, of all sorts of different things. And both of those things are on our website. On the calendar. If you want to click on those links, you can see what interests you. They're both free. So I would encourage you to check those out.
Yeah, so here, let's go here for a second. Let me see if I can get this here. Here, let's go here. If you go here, this calendar link here at the top of the page. So that's a link that's always at the top, and this will take you down to the calendar. And since we're now in May, you can flip down to here. There's the Rabbinical Assembly Conversion Tikkun. You click on that link and you can get the schedule of who's talking when, and also register to sign up. And it's free to sign up for that. This is our Tikkun, our information here. And the Thursday before, is that on our schedule or not? Yeah,
it's there. It's at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, there it is. Shavuot and Learnathon at 9 o'clock. So you can click there and get the link for that. Okay. All right. So yeah, so those are really good things. And Rabbi Ford is part of that Houston Learnathon on Thursday. So so that's a number of things. Thanks, Jennifer. Those are a number of things that are coming up for Shavuot. So now let's talk about the book of Ruth. So we only go to midnight, by the way, at Beth Yeshurun. After that, you can watch the Rabbinical Assembly classes if you'd like, or you can go to sleep. In my younger days, I used to stay up all night. I'm finding it very hard to stay up all night. I can't pull all-nighters anymore like I could when I was younger. So I just go to sleep and wake up the next day. But if you want to stay up all night, you can. There's those classes that the Rabbinical Assembly is doing. Okay, so let's talk about the book of Ruth. That's the book, there's a scroll that's read for each of the festivals. As I mentioned, the Song of Songs is read for Passover. Ecclesiastes is read on Sukkot. And the book of Ruth is read for Shavuot. So the book of Ruth is a fascinating story. And Ruth is considered the Bible's model Jew by choice. So I'll just briefly give you the outline. It's actually a short book. It's like 4 chapters long. It's easy to read, very short read. In the opening few verses, the story is told of an Israelite family that leaves Israel because of a famine, crossed the Jordan River into sort of quasi-enemy territory of the Moabites. The Moabites were not necessarily friendly to the Israelites. but there was a famine in Israel, and they thought, we got to make a living, we got to live. So they crossed the Jordan River into Moab. It was a mother, a father, and 2 sons. And while they're living in Moab, the 2 sons marry Moabite women. And then tragedy strikes the family, and all the men die. The father dies, and the 2 sons die. And all that's left is the mother and the 2 daughters-in-law. And that all happens within the first few verses of the first book. Right? That's the setup for the story. So now Naomi, the mother, is, as you can imagine, utterly depressed and devastated. Her life has been completely shattered. She not only lost her husband, but both of her children. She's too old, as she's going to explain later, to have more children. So she's going to live out the rest of her life as a lonely widow, and probably a poor lonely widow, because in those days, you know, it was very hard for women to make a living by themselves. That's just the way the economy and the culture worked. So she was going to have a really tough life the rest of her life. And her whole life has been shattered. So she decides the famine is over in Israel. She's going to go back to her hometown, where hopefully she can get some support from friends or relatives. And she tells her daughters, you stay here. You know, you're still young. You can get married again. Of course, that was the way women survived back then. So you can get married again here, you know, people, and why follow me to a strange place that you don't speak the language and you don't know anybody? So the daughters-in-law say, no, we want to come with you. We care about you. You're our mother-in-law. You know, we want to support you. We're going to come with you. And so Naomi says, no, stay here. Don't come back with me. I don't have anything for you. I'm not going to have any more kids. So there's nobody else for you to marry. You might as well stay here with your kinsman. So one of them turns back and agrees to stay. And the other one, Ruth, says to Naomi, no, I'm going to follow you. And so a third time, Naomi says to her, don't come. Why are you coming with me? I don't have anything for you. And then Ruth makes this kind of famous statement: don't urge me to turn away from following you, because wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Wherever you go, I will go, and where you die, there I will be buried. I vow before God that nothing but death could part me from you. See, I memorized her whole speech. That's her whole speech. Really very powerful statement of devotion to Naomi, but also to the Jewish people and the Jewish God. And so many people see that as her sort of conversionary moment, right? Where she decides she's really throwing her lot in with the Jewish people, as well as with her mother-in-law. And so Naomi stops trying to turn her away, and she follows after her. Now, because Naomi tried to dissuade Ruth 3 times, that's where some Orthodox rabbis get the idea that they should turn away potential converts 3 times. And if they persist after being turned away 3 times, then they're like Ruth and they're sincere, and they should be taken in and then explain to them, you know, how to live a Jewish life so they can fit in with our culture and our world. So anyway, so Ruth comes with Naomi back to the home. The rest of the story involves a weird ritual that's described in the 5 books of Moses called levirate marriage. In fact, the famous case of levirate marriage happens in the book of Genesis and deals with the ancestor of both Naomi and Ruth. Many people have commented on this. Not Ruth, sorry, Naomi. So the idea in the Bible is if a brother marries a woman and they have no children and the brother dies, then the brother of the person who died is supposed to marry the widow and have children. And the children that they have will be considered the dead brother's children, so that the dead brother's name will continue, it will be remembered. And his portion of the family inheritance will go through a separate line. That's called levirate marriage. And if the brother fails to do his duty, fails to honor this responsibility and marry the widow, she's supposed to take him before the elders of the city and spit in his face and take the sandal off his foot and do some other humiliating things, and say, you're a no good for nothing person because you're not doing your family responsibility to your brother. So that's called levirate marriage, but it only applies to brothers. And the story that's told about Judah and Tamar in the book of Genesis, I'll leave it to you to read, is a story of that kind of a system. And the offspring of the result of that situation, which you can read about, ends up being Naomi. Okay, so I had to explain that to you because of what happens next. So they come back to Israel. They're destitute. They don't have land. They don't have anything. But it's the harvest season. It's the spring harvest season of barley, around the Shavuot time. And so Naomi says to Ruth, because the rules of harvesting are that you're not supposed to harvest every last sheaf of grain on the field. You're not supposed to harvest all the way to the corners of the field. And if something falls out of the basket, you're supposed to leave it on the ground. So the poor people who are coming behind you will pick those up and they'll have something to eat also. So during the harvest, this is an opportunity for poor people to get something to eat. So Naomi says to Ruth, why don't you go out to the fields and be among the poor people who are sort of gleaning the fields after the professional harvesters. And then you can get some food for us and we'll have food. So Ruth goes out and does that. And as she's picking up sheaves of grain that have fallen on the ground, the owner of the field where she's gleaning spies her, sees her from a distance. And his name is Boaz. And he for whatever reason, takes an interest in her. It may be that she's physically attractive. It may be that something about her caused him to have compassion for her. But in any case, at the break time, there's a lunch break. This is actually interestingly recorded in the book. At the lunch break, he tells his professional harvesters, you see that woman over there? She's harvesting after you. I want you to be sloppy. Leave a lot of stuff behind for her. Because I want her to have a lot to take home tonight. And he says, and this is kind of sort of in the Me Too moment that we're living in now, he says to his workers, don't mess with her. You're not to harass her. Leave her alone. So after the lunch break, she's harvesting, and so all of a sudden she's gathering a whole lot more than she did before. She comes home with this overflowing basket full of stuff to Naomi, and Naomi's shocked. Like, how did, normally harvesters don't leave so much behind. What happened to you? How did you end up with so much stuff? Where were you? And she says, I don't know. I think the guy's name was Boaz or something. And Naomi says, this is a sign from God. Boaz, turns out, is a distant relative, not the brother of your deceased husband, right, which would be a real levirate marriage, but a more distant relative of your deceased husband. And so maybe there's something going on here. Pay attention to this guy when you're harvesting. And so she does. And now it's been a whole year since I read the story, and I should have read it before today. She eventually, Naomi says to her, go to him towards the end of the harvest day, And when he goes into the threshing floor to sleep, because I guess, when you're in the middle of the harvest, you don't want to sleep too far from the field. So you could sleep in the shack that's the threshing floor. When he goes in to sleep in the threshing floor, you go in and follow him there. This is kind of a risque part of the story. So she goes in, and it says she uncovers his feet and she lies down next to him. And he's sleeping because he doesn't recognize her. But when he wakes up, he sees that she's there, and he says, "My goodness, what are you doing here?" And she said, "Well, I'm the daughter-in-law of Naomi, and she told me to do this." And he says, "Oh, well, that makes you a distant relative of mine. So this is great. Since you've been so kind to come here and be here with me, maybe we should get married." But he says, "But unfortunately, there's a closer kinsman. There's somebody closer in relation to your dead husband than me. So he has the first option to claim this responsibility." Again, it's not really a responsibility. Levirate marriage only applies to brothers, but it's the way the book is told. He has a first opportunity to decide whether to marry you or not. So we'll check in the morning. And if he doesn't want to marry you, then I will marry you. But you should leave now before the sun comes up, because we don't want people to spread rumors. Now, until this year, I assumed that the Bible was giving you the G-rated version of the story. And she didn't just uncover his feet, and something perhaps a little more than just sleeping in the threshing floor with him, literally sleeping in the threshing floor. Something a little more than that happened. But I just heard a talk about the book of Ruth that persuaded me that the writer was intentionally telling you nothing else happened. It's a complicated, I'm not going to get into it now, but it is based on a story of Judah and Tamar. And this is a case where the book is kind of paralleling the story of Judah and Tamar, but in a way to tell you this is even better. This is the ultimate act of kindness, and nothing happened between the two of them. And I'm convinced, I think he's right about that now. It's a topic of another discussion. Anyway, that's all to say, everything's kosher. This really is like a Hollywood movie from the 1950s. Nothing happened. Okay, so she goes back to Naomi and tells her what happened. Naomi says, great. They come back. There's a scene in front of the elders where the closer relative says, oh yeah, I'll marry you. So it may be that she was physically attractive. Who knows? He's ready to marry her. But then Boaz reminds him that if they have kids, they won't be considered his kids. They'll be considered her dead husband's kids. And he'll have to divide his estate, basically, with his other kids. And then he says, oh, well, never mind. I'm not interested. So then Boaz steps in and says, I will marry you, and they get married. And the last part of the book is a genealogy. And this is obviously an important part of the book at the end, where it says that the children that they have become like the great-grandfather of King David. The story supposedly takes place in the period of the Judges. And so the author of the book of Ruth is trying to tell you that a number of things. And one of them that many scholars believe is the author of this book, which is written not in the time of the Judges, but probably in the time of the return from the Babylonian exile, right, hundreds of years later. Ezra and Nehemiah, the two prophets of the return from exile, told the Israelite men to divorce their foreign women who they married in Babylonia, because they're really pagans, and they will raise their children to be pagans, and that will kind of destroy our faith, our culture, our religion. So divorce your foreign wives, leave them behind. They're only going to corrupt the children and teach them pagan things instead of Jewish things. And then you have this book of Ruth. And not only is Ruth not Jewish, she's like almost like from the enemies, right? The Moabites were not friends of the Israelites. And the book is telling you basically not every foreigner is bad. Right? Not every, some people really sincerely want to join the Jewish people like Ruth did. Some people really want to practice our faith and tradition and worship our God and be part of our culture and join their lot with the Jewish people. And we should be welcoming those people. We should greet them with open arms and be grateful that they want to join us. That's what it seems to me that the book of Ruth is trying to tell us, particularly at a time when Ezra and Nehemiah were saying foreigners are not so good for us. Right? The book of Ruth is saying not only can they be good for us, who knows who the next King David's going to come from, right? And so this expression of devotion that Ruth has, not only for her mother-in-law but for the Jewish people, is a good thing, and we should welcome people who want to do that. So that's why Ruth is considered the Bible's model Jew by choice, and her statement of loyalty is an incredible statement that many people are familiar with. But the other thing about this story is it is primarily also about loving kindness, acts of kindness. Ruth follows Naomi not just because she wants to be Jewish, although she apparently does, right? Your people will be my people and your God, my God. That is part of the story, but at least as important is she really, really cares about Naomi. She sees how shattered Naomi is. When Naomi returns from Moab to her kinsmen, her kinsmen say, "Oh, Naomi, it's been so long. Where you been? How you doing?" She says to them, "Don't call me Naomi anymore." Naomi means pleasant, nice. She says, "I don't feel like Naomi. Call me Mara," which means bitter, because my life is bitter now. I am miserable. So she's totally depressed and shattered. And Ruth sees that, and she feels terrible for this woman and wants to take care of her and protect her and look after her and make sure she's not alone, right? And that's at least the part of the motivating factors of Ruth, her overwhelming compassion and kindness. So that's on the one side. And on the other side, you have Boaz, who at one point kind of indicates he's a little bit older than her, maybe a lot older than her. But they don't, that again, nothing happens on that threshing floor. It's not about that. He really cares about her, right? He sees her as being destitute, lonely, isolated, a foreigner, has nobody here, and he has overwhelming compassion for her and cares about her and how she's going to manage in this world. And yes, I will marry you so that you won't be alone and you won't be poor and you won't have, I'll make sure that you have a good life, right? And so you have this overwhelming compassion of these two major characters in the story. And that also is what leads to having King David, right? And so it's a story of kindness and compassion, overwhelming kindness and compassion. So it's interesting, it's read on Shavuot, partly because it is the barley harvest festival, and partly also because of her being a convert. Because in the Jewish tradition, we understand that we're all converts. We all chose to take on this role of being God's partners with this covenant that we accepted. And when did we accept this covenant, this contract? At Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments. That's what Shavuot represents. So we became Jewish, so to speak. We willingly joined the Jewish mission at Mount Sinai. The people who were born Jewish did. And people who want to join us are also accepting that same mission. And that's what Ruth represents, right? And we're all partners. We're all part of the same family. Once you are part of the tribe, so to speak, you're part of the tribe, right? And as I've explained at the beginning of the course, becoming Jewish is not about your faith, which is important. It's not just about your relationship with God. It's about becoming part of the Jewish people, like becoming an American citizen, right? It's when you take that oath and you go have that ceremony, after learning about American history and some of the laws, right? You take an oath to be a good American citizen, and you get that identification, and you are now an American citizen, a full member. You vote, you get to participate in everything in society, and nobody can tell you otherwise. And that is the same with converting to Judaism, right? Once you join the Jewish people, you're a member of the tribe, so to speak, and you have the full rights and responsibilities of every other member of the tribe. So Shavuot is really, and the book of Ruth, are really a holiday also particularly for you all who are choosing to join the Jewish people. I guess I didn't get to talk about the rest of this stuff. This is kind of a fun story that was told about the giving of the 10 Commandments. I'll have to save it for another day. This was in my story about creating paradise on earth, so I won't repeat it. You can watch the whole program about creating paradise on earth, where I talk about this passage from the Talmud. And this is a diagram of the two versions of the 10 Commandments, one in Exodus, one in Deuteronomy. And the parts in boldface type are the parts that are different. They're not verbatim the same thing. It's interesting when the story is repeated in Deuteronomy, it's with slightly different words. Not too many different words, but there they are. And this is a story about the book of Ruth by one of my teachers from the seminary, Eliezer Diamond, and about kindness and compassion. Okay, so that's it. Any questions? That is the story of Ruth and Shavuot. Oh, Diane's coming in. Okay, so Diane's going to take over the class now.
Okay, thank you,
And
Rabbi.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So next week we'll
Thank
talk
you.
about the conversion ceremony and next steps.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right.
Thank
care.
you.
Boker Tov.
Boker Tov.
Boker Tov. How is everyone?
Good.
Oh, I'm
Baruch
glad.
Hashem.
I should ask you in Hebrew, Manishma. Manishma.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch
Baruch
Hashem.
Hashem. Good. Or you could say Tov or Ha 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 ha.
Oh,
Ha ha ha.
How do you say happy birthday? It's Adam's birthday today.
Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom. Here, I'm going to write it in the chat. I'll write it in English. Yom
Sameach.
Huledet Sameach.
Yom Huledet Sameach.
So Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. Yom Huledet Sameach. And we have we have an expression.
It's a lot of noise.
So I just wrote Admeya ve'esrim. Has anybody ever heard that expression? Admeya ve'esrim?
No.
No?
So we're told, our tradition says that Moses lived to be 120. So Admeya ve'esrim is us wishing you and to live to be at least 120.
Okay.
And who knows, with today's technology, maybe people in your generation will live to be 120. How about that?
Right.
Okay. So Anachnu be'amud shmonim v'shmona. We are on page 88. Can you believe it?
Yep.
Oh. Look at when you
We
look
looked
the
at this last week, but I'm just going to review it for a few minutes. We have that letter, the chaf sofit, the final chaf. And it doesn't really look anything like a regular chaf. But I think you could mix it up, and some of you mentioned this with resh. It looks like a very long resh. And people sometimes mix it up with a dalit. Once again, it goes below, if it was ruled paper, like there were lines on the paper, the stem would definitely go below the line and below where the vowels are. And I'm trying to think what else. It can be mixed up sometimes with a nun sofit. And I've seen people mix it up with a kuf, right? So those are some letters you might mix it up with. But unlike those letters, look at how the chaf sofit has a vowel in it. And here the vowel is a silent shva. And usually when you see a chaf sofit at the end of the word, it either has a silent shva or it has a kamatz, which makes the ah sound. Right? Those are the two most common ways in which the chaf sofit appears. And let's go to the top of page 89. And here we go. I'm going to read each word. So it's saying that there's this special ending. There's the ending echa. Echa. Can you say echa?
Echa.
Echa means your. So chasadecha is your loving kindness. Avadecha is your servants. Ma'asecha is your deeds or your acts. Elohecha, your God. Livanecha, your children. So that echa means the possessive your. Okay, so just repeat after me. Chasadecha.
Chasadecha.
Echa.
Avadecha.
Avadecha.
Ma'asecha.
Maasecha.
Echa.
Elohecha.
Elohecha.
Echa.
Levanecha.
Levanecha.
Echa.
Tov ma'od. Tov ma'od. Okay, so let's continue. We're going to read page 89. I'll read line 1 once, and then you can just echo me the second time. Baruch imecha shemech amcha derech alecha. Baruch imecha
Imecha.
shemech
Shemech.
amcha
Amcha.
derech
Derech.
alecha.
Alecha.
Good. Line 2. Melech libecha reacha herech erech libech. Melech
Melech.
libecha
Libecha.
reacha
Reacha.
herech
Erech.
erech
Erech.
libech.
Libech.
Good. Line 3. Kamocha tsar.
Oops.
That was my fault. I wasn't sure what I was doing. Kamocha tsarich holech elecha avicha uzecha. Kamocha
Kamocha.
tsarich
Tarich.
holech
Olech.
elecha
Elech.
avicha
Avicha.
uzecha.
Uzecha.
Good.
The dragon is hard to. That's a Zion, right?
Yeah, it's a Zion. Good question. It's a Zion.
That's a hard letter.
It's hard. It's just like a Z.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you mean it's hard to recognize it because it looks like a Vav?
Yes, that's exactly it.
It looks like a vav with a beret on top, right? It's wearing a beret. Okay, that's, I don't know. Everybody has their imagination, but that's, I have attached a beret to the top of my Zion. I'm just telling you that. Okay, line 4. I'll read it. Baruch banecha imcha beitecha otcha kulcha. Baruch
Baruch
banecha
Banecha
imcha
Imcha
beitecha
Betecha
otcha
Otcha
kulcha.
Kulcha
Good. Line 5. Mevorach yimloch levavcha yadecha meodecha. Mevorach
Mevorach
yimloch
Imloch
levavcha
Levavcha
yadecha
Yadecha
meodecha.
Meodecha
Good. Okay, here we go. Line 6. Lefanecha einecha nafshecha mitzavcha somech malach. Beginning at the beginning of the line. Lefanecha
Lefanecha
einecha
Enecha
nafshecha
Nafshecha
mitzavcha
Mitzavcha
somech
Somech
malach.
Malach
Good. 7. Mitzvotecha. Why is it mitzvotecha?
Because there's a vowel before the vav.
Yes, there's a vowel before the vav. That's good. Mitzvotecha kedushatcha vishlomecha Elohai. Okay. Mitzvotecha
Mitzvotecha
kedushatcha
Kedushatcha
bishlomecha
Bishlomecha
Elohai.
Elohai
Good. And line 8. Tanach Baruch Uvlechecha Uvkumecha Uvisharecha. Tanach
Tanakh,
Baruch
Baruch
Uvlechecha.
Uvlechecha
Right. If you have 2 shvas in a row, you pronounce the second one. Okay, so it's uvlechecha. Uvkumecha
Uvkumecha
uvisharecha.
Uvisharecha.
Okay, and then they reminded us of these 2 vocabulary words, but I'm not going to stop for them now. Melech, king, and Baruch, blessed. Okay, I am going to read line 1, and then you circle the words that rhyme, okay? I'll read line 1 on page 90. Regel, Baruch, Degel, Yadecha.
Degel, Rogel.
down the day go.
Right, Regel and Degel. Now, just to be difficult, I'm going to ask you to find the 2 words that rhyme on line 2.
Aroch. Aroch mevorach.
I think that we can do better than that because with,
Ruach and Teshuvah.
yes, just because of the more of the vowels rhyme, right? There's some parallels in roch and mevorach, but teruah, teshuvah, right? It's got that pattern. Ah. Hebrew grammar, that those patterns are everything. Those vowel patterns, like tells you it's the same part of speech. Those are both nouns. Teruah, teshuvah. So on line 3, when you're doing it, try to say the vowels like shelomech, it's o, a. So try to find the ones that have the closest vowel patterns.
3 and 4.
The 3rd and the 4th. Are you brave enough to try to read them though?
Hanukkah and Sugania.
Very good. And what do those 2 words have in common? Does anybody know? Chanukiah and Sufganiya. They have something in common besides that iya ending.
I like to eat those.
Hanukkah.
You like to eat Sufganiya? Gamani. I
Yeah.
also like to eat them.
Oh, okay, because we're used to saying Sufani Yot because there's multiple.
Right. So this is singular. So what do Chanukiah and Sufganiya have in common?
Hanukkah is a Hanukkah menorah, right?
Right.
For the holiday
Right.
Hanukkah, you eat Sufani Yot during Hanukkah.
Right. You eat Sufganiya on Hanukkah. Although I tell you that now, when I was young, maybe I could eat a whole one, but now I have one bite and I feel like I've had the experience. It's enough to like put you to sleep for the rest of the day.
The
Sugar rush and then you crash. Okay.
When we went to the bakery this morning, I was this close to buying so many hamantashens that I couldn't handle it, but we decided against it.
Yeah, good decision. Just one, just get one. Okay. I am also very seasonal about Jewish treats. Like I only eat honey cake for Rosh Hashanah, and I only eat sufganiyah on Hanukkah, and I only eat hamantashen on Purim. I'd like to or matzah. I only eat matzah on Pesach. There's certain foods I only like to have it when it's that holiday.
Mhm.
You're
So,
so disciplined.
well, it makes it more special if you associate it with the holiday. So I have very, very little to say. Okay, line 4. Can anybody find the ones that rhyme?
Levavecha and Metzarecha.
Yes, Livav. I'm just going to say that the shva is silent because there's just one. So it's Livavcha and Mitzavcha. Very good. Livavcha and Mitzavcha. Your heart and your commandment. Livavcha, Mitzavcha. Okay, line 5. Tmuna Racham. Oops, I'm cheating. All right, I'll do it, and then you can tell me. Tmuna Rachamav Likvod Agula.
The first and the fourth. Tamuna.
First is, yes, the first and the fourth. Tmuna Agula. Tmuna Agula. Okay. Next, we have a Passover counting song. Okay, read the line with the number your partner calls out. Oh, I wouldn't do that to you, but how about if I give you a few minutes to identify one of these lines that you're willing to try to read, and then you can volunteer to read a line to us. If you want to mute so that you can practice it a few times, that's fine. This comes from the melody, from the song. Bum, 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 bum. Echad mi yodea, echad ani yodea. It's a Passover song. So
Can I try number one?
Bevakasha, try number one.
Echad Eloheinu Shebashamayim Shebashamayim no Shebashamayim Mayim
Yes.
Uva'aretz.
That's right. Good for you.
Kendra, can you pronounce the third word, please?
Shebashamayim. Shebashamayim.
Shebashamayim.
So let's see if I can. Uva'aretz. So the song would go, Echad mi yodea, Echad ani yodea, Echad Eloheinu, 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 Shebashamayim uva'aretz. There you go. You can see one line of the song now, right? Did anybody else try a line?
I'll try number 3.
Okay.
All right, so that would be Shalosha Avot.
Right, Shlosha Avot, the three fathers. The three fathers. So Shlosha ani yodea, Shlosha ani yodea, Shlosha Avot, Shnei luchot habrit, Echad Eloheinu, 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 Shebashamayim uva'aretz. So we're saying there are three fathers, 2 tablets of commandments, and one God in the heavens and the earth. Okay, who wants to do another line from the song?
I can try number 2, Shenei Luchot Havriit.
Good. Shnei luchot haberit. Can you say it
Oh,
again?
Havriit. Yeah, Havriit. Okay.
Shnei luchot haberit.
Havriit. Okay.
Right. Right. Very good. 2 tablets of the covenant, which is referring to the 10 commandments. Would anybody else like to try a line?
I'll do line 4.
Great.
Arba imachot.
Good. Does anybody know who the imahot are?
The 4 mothers.
The 4 mothers, from the word ima, for mother. Imahot, the 4 mothers. And the 4 mothers are, does anybody know? It's okay if you don't.
Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, Rachel.
Matriarchs.
Good. Tov ma'od. All right, very good. Did anybody else want to try to read a line? Okay, that's fine. Let's continue. But next year, let's learn this song. It's a great song. All right.
Passover has a lot of good songs.
Yes, it does.
Chad Gad Yah was my favorite.
Yes, the principal of the Hebrew school years ago, her name was Devorah Erkowitz of blessed memory, used to race the kids in order to get the kids to learn Chad Gad Yah. She could sing it at like supersonic speed, and the kids were very inspired to try to keep up with her. There was a contest every year at the Seder for who could sing faster than Mrs. Urkowitz, but no one could ever catch up with her. So, and that's also sort of like a counting song, right? Because we keep adding things to the list of, you know, first it's the goat, and then it's, I always get mixed up about the verses, but those stick that hit the goat, and every verse has another situation. Anyway, let's go on to doing Aleph on page 91. Okay, so I think everybody's already knows Aleph from singing the Aleph Bet song. And Aleph and Ayin are the two sort of silent consonants, right? Sometimes Hay's kind of a silent consonant at the end of a word. Sometimes Yud is a vowel, and sometimes it's sounded, and sometimes it's not, just like a Y in English. But Aleph is really a silent consonant, like Ayin. Okay. And what do you think you might confuse the Aleph with? What do you think? What do you think looking at the Aleph? The Aleph is the one that's red, not the letter that's got the green circle around it. What would you confuse the Aleph with? I thought we had Aleph once before, didn't we?
Yeah, haven't we been having Aleph?
I never noticed before, but you know, we have, so I don't know why they're saying, oh, I guess Aleph is a vocabulary word here. I think that's what it is. It's the vocabulary word, not the letter we're learning. Isn't that funny? How confusing. Okay. It's just a vocabulary word. Okay. So the letter they're teaching us is the fe that comes at the end of a word, right? It's the final fe or the fe sophite.
Is fe sophite not a common letter?
Not so common. I guess they had to struggle to come up with a word that had one. It's much more common in a word than at the end of a word.
It's kind of like how all of those children's books always use X-ray for the letter X because nothing else really starts with it.
Right. There aren't too many. There aren't too many English words that have an X. Okay. At the beginning. Okay. So that's our face. So feet. So let's just jump down. So it looks a little bit like a chaf sophite with a nose. Don't you think it looks a little like a chaf sophite with a nose? That's what I think of it as. Just like I think of a regular fe as a chaf with a nose. It just has that kind of nose look. Okay. Line 1 at the bottom of 91. I'll read the line and then you can read it with me the second time. Af, daf, of, kof, goof, suf. Okay, now you'll read it after. Af, daf,
Daf,
of,
of,
kof,
oh,
goof,
goof,
suf.
Soup.
Good. Line 2. Kaf, tov, af, sof, taf, kef. Kaf,
Ka.
tov,
tof,
af,
af,
sof,
So.
taf,
Ka.
kef.
af,
Kate.
Line 3. Yef, naf, tef, taf, raf, suf. Okay with me? Yef,
Yef.
naf,
naf,
tef,
sef,
saf,
Sa.
raf,
graf,
suf.
suf,
Good. And then the last one. Haraf, el.
oops,
Did I skip a line? You
No.
weren't sure, right? Can you hear Cantor Finkelstein in the background? Can you hear him?
No.
No. Oh, he's playing and singing. I'm getting like a little concert while I teach. Taraf, Elef, Yauf, Betof, Radaf. Okay, now echoing me. Taraf,
Taraf,
Elef,
Elef,
Yauf,
Yauf,
Betof,
Betov,
Radaf.
Radha.
Taf.
Good. Okay. Let's see how much. Oh, we're okay. Okay. Circle and then read the last two words of line 8 above. Oh, why would that be? Okay, let's go to line 8 and please circle the last two words. Okay, so the last two words are lehit atef bat sit sit. Lehit atef bat sit sit. And those are the special words that make a blessing, the blessing for wearing a talit. It would be Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav zivanu hitatev bat sit sit. So can you just say lehitatev
Lehit atef,
bat sit sit?
bat
It.
sit,
Lehitatev bat sit sit.
Bot, seat, seat.
So when you're putting on a talit, usually, but not always, the sort of collar of the talit, you know, there's like a band at the top of the talit that's usually embroidered. And it's usually embroidered with the blessing for putting on the talit. So it's blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who makes us holy with his commandments and commands us to wrap ourselves in a talit. But we say the word tzitzit, it refers to the fringes. So let's say the last two words again, lehitatef bat tzitzit.
Lehit atef, bat sit.
Bot, seat, seat.
Okay, so I'm gonna make pretend I'm putting on a talit because I don't have one with me. And I'm holding the blessing up in front of me. It's like the collar of the talit. And I say the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatev bat tzitzit. And then I kiss the beginning of the blessing, the first word and the last word on the collar of the talit. And then I swing it around my shoulders and I'm wearing a talit. When you see people putting on their talit, that's what they're doing. Now, some people have this kind of Kabbalistic or Hasidic tradition of putting the talit over their head while they do the bracha. That's, I won't say it's not a mainstream belief, but it's more of a Hasidic thing to do. I don't do that when I put on a talit, but people do. Okay, so here we have this challenge. Find the Hebrew name for Joseph in the lines above. Just a hint that in Hebrew, the J turns into a Y. Can you find the Joseph's name up here?
Line 3.
Line 3. How would you feel about trying to read it?
With the line,
No, just the name.
Yosef.
Right, Yosef. Joseph is Yosef. Good. And can you find the word for peace?
Line 6,
Nachon. And of course, what's the word for peace?
Shalom.
Shalom. That's right. Okay, now on page 93, there's something that I like very, very much. It's teaching us about the 3 letters. Traditionally, Hebrew words are built on 3-letter roots called the shoresh. Shoresh just means root. So the word Baruch is built on the root Bet, Resh, Chaf, and Bet can also be Vet, and Chaf can also be Kaf. So it could be Bet, Resh, Chaf, or it could be Vet, Resh, Chaf, or it could be Bet, Resh, Kaf. And for Kaf, it could be Chaf, or Kaf, or Chaf Sofit. They're all the same letter. Bet and Vet are the same letter, and Chaf, Chaf, Chaf Sofit, all the same letter. So on the tree that we have with all of the different words that have the root for Baruch, can you write the root underneath there? Bet or Vet, Resh, Chaf, can you write that under the tree? I guess we haven't practiced writing much. Okay, so in each word, can you circle the root, the Bet, Resh, Chaf, or Vet, Resh, Chaf root? So these are all words that have to do with blessing. Bracha is a blessing. Baruch means blessed. Brachot are blessings, plural. Barhuni means bless us. In fact, on the next column, Barhu, let us bless. Mivorach, the one who is blessed. Yitbarach means bless. And Birkat means the blessing of. Right? So they're all words that have that Bet, Resh, Chaf root, so you know they have to do with blessings. And sometimes, as the book mentions, it can be translated as praise. And that comes from the idea that how can we bless God? We can't really bless God, we can praise God. So that's kind of a theological translation of the word. But for general purposes, you could just translate it as Baruch, as blessed. Okay. Let's see. All right. So at the bottom, did people manage to do that? Was that easy? So I feel like if there were like 50 roots that if you learned them, the Torah would, and more than the Torah, the prayer book would be a piece of cake. 50 roots that are used over and over again in many, many different words that if you knew them, it would just be very, very easy to follow your way around the Siddur. So maybe we'll do a class on that next year and maybe some of you will sign up for it. I would love that. Okay. At the bottom of the page, we have these endings. And if you look at line 1, all the words end with the patach and a yud. Patach is that horizontal line that makes an ah sound, and then they're followed by yud. So patach plus yud sounds like I, like in the word pie, I. Okay, now, if you go to line 3 and you look at the first word, we have alav, where we have kamatz, yod, vav, right? Kamatz is the vowel that looks like a little T and sounds like ah. So kamatz, yod, vav is pronounced av. So the yud is silent, right? You're just pronouncing the kamatz and the vav. Av. But in line 1, the first word, Shaddai, Patach and Yud, you're pronouncing the Patach and the Yud. I. Okay. So let's read line 1. I'll read it first, then you read it with me, right? And we're saying that Patach and Yud is I. Shaddai. Alai. Adonai, Elohai, Sinai. Okay, a lot of times a yud at the end of a word means it's first person possessive, like my or mine. Not always, but often. Okay, let's try again. You'll echo me. Shaddai,
Shaddai.
Alai,
Alai,
Adonai,
Adonai,
Elohai,
Elohai,
Sinai,
Sinai,
Divarai,
Devorai,
Avotai,
Avotai,
Ushvatai,
Us,
Rabotai,
Rabotai,
Mitzvotai.
Mitzvot,
Right, line 3. Alav,
Alav,
Einav,
Einav,
Yadav,
Yadav,
Hasidav,
Hasidav,
Devarav.
Devarai,
Good, in line 4. Hanav,
Hanav.
Mitzvotav,
Mitzvotav.
Verachamav,
Ama,
Ma'asav.
Ma'asav,
Ma'asav.
Good. Okay. Well, unfortunately, this year, as you know, we're next year, maybe we'll all be in the same room together, but for now, we're going to have to just kind of do these exercises together and not in relay. So now on 94, we're going to review what it means to have the two shvas, right? If you have two shvas, it's pronounced as the first one is silent and the second one is sounded, right? In addition, it's telling us that in words 5 and 10, kamatz in the first word is pronounced like an O. So I'm going to mark that in my book. You know, that's when does anybody remember what it's called when a kamatz is pronounced like an O? What do we call that vowel where the kamatz is pronounced like an O? Does anybody remember?
Kamatz, Patach, let me see.
Oh,
No,
there's actually chataf, chatach, no, chataf kamatz. That's when the kamatz has two dots in front of it, has a shva in front of it, and that's pronounced like an O. And there's also kamatz katon, where it's kamatz all by itself, and it's pronounced like an O. So here we have what's called a kamatz katon. A kamatz that's pronounced like an O. Okay, so I'm going to let you try to read these words. So on line 1, would somebody try to read the first word? You can read the 2 syllables separately first, and then actually I'll do one just to demonstrate, okay? Naf shecha. Naf shecha. Did somebody do line 2?
Because
Navshacha, no,
That was right. Chas decha. Chas decha. Line 3. Does somebody want to do line 3?
Beshiv techa.
Good.
Beshiv techa.
Right. Beshiv techa. Good. Line 4.
Tiv. Teho. Tiv teho.
Good. Tiv techu. Good. Tiv techu.
Who? Okay. Tiv
Okay. On line 5, the vowel under the kuf is pronounced O. Would anybody like to do line number 5?
Kol shacha.
That's
Kol
right.
shacha. Got
Right, Kod Shecha. That's right, Kod Shecha. That's right.
shacha.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do the rest. Tease, Keru. Tease, Keru. Naf, Shechem. Naf, Shechem. Uv, Lech, Techa. Uv, Lech, Techa. Betzil, Tzele. Betzil, Tzele. Uv, Shoch, Becha. Uv, Shoch, Becha. Okay. Well, so this is what I was thinking for next time. That we learned various rules, Hebrew reading rules in the book, and it might be worth using our next lesson to go through and review the various rules that we learned, right? And then there were certain vocabulary lists that we didn't really get to play with very much. So we could work on some core vocabulary in our next class. Because as you may have noticed, we finished the book. Yay, Mazel tov.
Yay! Mazel tov, everybody.
So let's spend the next couple of classes just trying to do a good review of the rules and some useful vocabulary. Okay?
Cantor, can we also get a translation for all the key words for each chapter?
Yes, let's do that. Whenever they have like a list, I'm not going to do it for the exercises that are just reading exercises, but they do have like lists of words that they think it's useful for you to know. And I
Yeah.
think for those lists, we should put in the translations. We can write them in.
Okay. And then I have a question. What does goofy? Is that a word? Am I reading that right? Sometimes.
Goofy, yeah, goof is body, so goofy would be my body.
Okay. And then pen? Pen, is that how it's pronounced?
Pei nun, my book is in open. Pei nun, that can mean something like thus.
Okay. I see some of the words that keep coming up, and so like I don't know what they mean, and I wish I could know what, like I wish.
Sometimes words are used a lot, not because they're common, but because they're useful for teaching reading.
Okay.
So, but I'd like to go find the words that are going to be most useful for you and identify those.
Yes.
So we should do that. We should go through the lists that the teacher who wrote this book thinks are useful for you. Like for example, on 55, just randomly open my book. These are at the bottom of 55 are some very, very useful verbs, right? To read, to write, to lower, to stop, to take out, to dance, to hear, to find, to raise, to bow down. Some of them are useful because they show up in prayers, and some are very common in the Torah. And so we could, identify words like that that are worth making flashcards and really learning.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to say Lehitraot. I have my adult b'nai mitzvah rehearsal now. But you're doing so well, and I am so proud of you for making it to the end of the book. That is so awesome.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good week.
See you next
Bye-bye.
week.
Shavuot tov.
Great. Shavuot tov.
Bye.